Hello there. Welcome to Chief Update 0.3. So in this version, since the last update, I've kind of refocused the design of Chief. So one of the lessons I've learned over the years of this whole game development adventure has been to always make forward progress if I want to finish something. Because the first few years, I was kind of restarting my project over and over again. I would pivot the idea, or I would, want to make the systems differently, or I want to make the code cleaner because it's really complicated or whatever. And I'd just keep restarting the project. And I noticed after a while that, if I keep restarting the project, I'm never going to finish. So one of the things I decided to do was always make forward progress. And with that, when I look back at older videos, I noticed that I had kind of regressed in some major features. So, like for example, I broke follower AI in a recent version. I couldn't manipulate terrain, which was one of like the first features in the first version. I thought that was like one of the main things I wanted to do, and multiplayer as well doesn't work anymore. So in this version and the next few versions, I'm going to be adding those three features back in because I think they're part of kind of the core concept of what I want the game to be. Um, and then after that, building up from there. But always building up and moving forward and trying not to regress. So that way, over time, I can get to a point where I can see a point where I actually finish the game. Um, so yeah, so I guess let's just get into this version. So the main menu looks pretty similar to what it was, although I have in the refocus of the design, I got rid of factions. So there's no more factions. I felt like they weren't necessary and they kind of weren't part of the core idea of what I want the game to be. So it's just extra bugs and extra time and extra features and code to write that doesn't really add to the game. So kind of axe that. So I'll just create a new save. I will call this demonstration, and my first follower name be Kakarats. So when I start, you'll notice two things. One thing is that there's this new menu when you log in, or when you enter the world. This is the lobby essentially. So what I did recently is I separated the game from the game data from the player data. This is kind of in preparation for multiplayer and some other stuff I want to do in the future. The actual lobby screen itself is probably going to go away though, because I realized that I don't know, having multiple player profiles on the same computer isn't a super common use case. So I'll probably figure this out a different way. And the other thing I'll probably notice is that the world is flat. um, so I kind of wanted to add some new features to the terrain, and that involved creating a custom shader for the terrain. And when I moved from flat terrain to height map terrain, I was using the Unity height map terrain, and creating custom shaders for that isn't super simple. And I figured, it's super complicated, and also in the end, I want voxel terrain and not height map terrain anyway. So I kind of chucked the Unity terrain, went to this flat terrain again, created my custom shader, and I'm gonna reuse that custom shader when I create the voxel terrain system. So yeah, I'll just spawn into the world, and you'll see that the UI is a little bit different now. In the top left, you can see the player name and how much money they have. So money is a new thing, and then you'll see the follower name and their needs and what they're currently doing. So the reason there's money now is because I've added like a little market where you can like buy and sell stuff. So before I had the furnace and the bed and some other stuff kind of sitting there in the world already. But now you actually harvest materials, raw materials, process them, and sell them for money, and then you can use that money to buy other things that you need. So for example, I can buy, a furnace or an anvil, and you can see my money on the right went down from 10,000 to 9,000. If you look at the bottom right, my money's at 9,000. I buy a bed, it goes down to 8,500. So now I have those items in my inventory. You'll see that the first thing you'll notice probably is that there's now a grid. So that's the custom shader I was talking about with the terrain. I wanted to add I was already snapping the objects to a grid, but I wanted to be able to visualize that grid. So now I have a shader for that. I will say it doesn't look super great. I don't know why. There's like a bug in the build where it's really blurry, but then in the editor it looks really nice. So I'm gonna have to figure that out in the future. But yeah, so now you can actually see the grid that I was snapping things to, which is pretty nice. So I'll place that anvil there. You'll see that also that I updated the anvil model and the tree model. These were like the ugliest models. I couldn't stand them, so um, I got rid of those and kind of used these. These are probably not final, but they at least don't bother me enough. So yeah. Also, I made the nice trees interactive now. So yeah, when I gather wood, I can do that. And also, there's a new interaction menu, as you can see. So it's like a radial menu, and you kind of just hover over the interaction, and it does the interaction. So I'm just gathering wood right now. And let's see. I will say when you're placing stuff, the grid is optional. So I can place stuff on the grid, or let me just buy a bunch of furnaces. Or I can disable the grid and kind of just place things wherever I want. And I've also added rotation, so you can kind of just arrange things exactly the way you want, which is pretty nice. Do that, whatever. And then if I go to grid snapping again, when I rotate, it rotates in 90-degree increments. But yeah, that's the grid. I've also started kind of a build system in this version. So with the build system, I have a fence, I have a hammer for destroying the fence, and then I have these tiles so you can place floor. I'm just going to buy a bunch of tiles. So I can kind of just start a wall here, and I can end it wherever I want, obviously, and it snaps to the grid. So I can, go to here, and when I click, it just continues the same wall, so I can just keep clicking and do that. And if I want to stop extending, I can right-click, and it stops, and I can start over here again, and I can connect over here, and if I connect, it doesn't continue either. So it makes it pretty quick to build things, which is pretty nice. And then, I can use the hammer, and I can take out walls if I want, and connect these two, and yeah, and then I can place tiles in here, add some flooring to the little house that I'm making. In the future, I'm gonna add some more robust flooring tools, so you don't have to place it tile by tile. So you could just like fill an area or drag or whatever. But also, the grid is still optional with these fences and walls in the future as well. So I can just disable the grid, and I can actually start drawing, curves and stuff. So I can do that, and I'll just draw a little doorway here. I will say that tiles don't really work well with these curved walls. I'm gonna probably figure that out in the future, because right now these tiles are just kind of squares. But yeah, it's kind of cool that you can just place walls however you want. And yeah, I'm gonna load up a save that I made earlier that has like a little bit more going on, just so you can see a little bit more complicated building. So here's a building I made earlier, and as you can see, there's just more walls and more tiles and stuff going on. So I have like a little pathway here that goes like to the front and the back of the house, and then when you enter, there's like this furnace, like this rotated anvil, and like there's this room with this bed, and there's like this room with these two beds and a furnace. But yeah, as I flesh out the build system, there's going to be doors and roofs and stuff like that. This is kind of just the beginning of that. But yeah, that's pretty much all I had to show for version 0.3. So yeah, thanks for watching.